everyone. I will be out this morning. I have to give my mother a ride to a couple of doctors. That's what we do. We repay our parents for all they've done for us. Today is another Folger Method. I want you to look in Act 3. I'm pointing, I don't know why, at the word crown. You're going to focus on the word crown today. I'm going to use my version here, as I always do. While I'm in front of you, I'll do some of your footnotes, right? So Act 3, Scene 2, lines 149 through 190. This is a scene in which Richard has basically run into some trouble, and he's going to have to give up the throne. But what I want to do, especially when you get to the end of this, I want you to look into the play, right? Act 2. We looked at Act 2 yesterday. Act 2 in my book, it's page 63, so Act 2, Scene 1, lines 105 to 109, right? Gaunt, right? We looked at Richard of Gaunt yesterday. John of Gaunt yesterday, and how he talked about this England, and how the king is causing this England to be sick. When the king comes in, he chastises him, he yells at him. And one of the things he says, starting at line 106, 1,000 flatterers sit within thy crown, whose compass is no bigger than thy head, and yet encaged in so small a verge, the waste is no whit lesser than thy land. Right? He's saying in this crown, kind of, equating his head with the crown. He wears the crown on his head, and all of these flatterers sit within thy crown, right? Within thy crown. And they flatter him, and they tell him he's right, and he's been wrong all along. Implying that this is going to cost him something, the crown. So now we move into Act 3, Scene 2. In my book, it's page 113, so it'll be somewhere around there. King Richard, when he gets back from Ireland, and he discovers that Bolingbroke has all but taken over. Bolingbroke has the backing of most of the nobles, except for, the ones who are supporting Richard, the few that are still supporting Richard, those ones that John of Gaunt was talking about, the flatterers, who are in his head, are in his ear, but have really no care for the crown, the actual royal crown. So he says, for every man that Bolingbroke hath pressed, this is Richard speaking, to lift shrewd steel against our golden crown, God, for his Richard, hath in heavenly pay a glorious angel. Richard is still secure in the fact that God has chosen him, right? Steel, swords, shields, war. Gold, crown, symbol of power given by God. So, shrewd steel against our golden crown, right? This is Act 3, Scene 2, that's line 60, 61. By line 165, the one I want you to look at here, right? Act 3, Scene 2, 149 to 190. 165, he says, for within the hollow golden crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king. You'll read that speech. That's what I want you to look at, right? Compare crown, Act 2, John of Gaunt, crown, earlier in Act 3, Scene 2, Richard. And then Richard again. Act 3, Scene 3. He's being forced. By the end of this act, he's being forced to capitulate. He's being forced to give up his throne to Bolingbroke. So I'm starting here in my book. It's page 131. So I want you to trace this when you're doing your blue questions and your purple questions and your red questions. I want you to look further in, near the end of Act 3. I'm starting at line 86. 7 thereabouts. Yet know, my master, God omnipotent is mustering in his clouds on our behalf armies of pestilence, and they shall strike your children yet unborn and unbegot, that lift your vassal hands against my head, and the threat the glory of my precious crown. Right? That's Richard talking in absolute biblical terms. God omnipotent is mustering in the clouds on our behalf armies of pestilence. Right? That's Moses. And they'll strike your yet unborn and unbegot. Right? God struck down the firstborn of the Egyptians. And lift your vassal hands. Right? There's no vassal. A vassal of a servant is a servant that lift your vassal servant's hands against my head, Richard, and threat the glory of my head. Next line, my precious crown. So 91, 92. Tell Bolingbroke, for yon methinks he stands, that every stride he makes upon my land is dangerous treason. It's all my, until the end of this act, when he realizes all of the armies and all of the lords have abandoned him, except for his yes men. And he has to, in Act 4, give up. So I want you to look at those particular lines, right? So we're looking at Act 3, Scene 3, starting about around line 90. This is after the speech I'm asking you to look at here, right? I'm asking you to look at here. Before that, oh Lordy. Before that was page 113. Sorry, I lost my page there for a second. Right, that steel against our golden crown, war against the throne. That's Act 3, Scene 2, line 60. And then in Act 2, going back to just to repeat, right? John of Gaunt, before he dies, says your weakness. At the bottom, this is Act 2, Scene 1. Yes, Act 2, Scene 1, line 106. 1,000 flatterers sit within thy crown. All these people who tell you that you're great, all the people that tell you everything you do is right, whose compass is no bigger than thy head. Your head has gotten bigger than the crown. And yet encaged in so small a verge, the waste of wit lesser than thy hand. Right? You can't fit the kingdom in your hand. You think you can, but you can't fit the kingdom in your hand. And therefore, you're going to lose it. After that, Gaunt dies. It's almost like he's in Act 2, there's a prophecy. In Act 3, crown, 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 until he loses the crown. So, in your deeper thinking boxes, I want you to consider those lines and those pages. Have a good day. Do your work well, and I will see you tomorrow, and we'll go over this.